outside, like they have this access to their personal data, but they want to create this external platform, and they can't boggle their developers with maintaining their own system to build this whole new thing. So they contract out us, and we design the whole thing, we develop it, we run it. I started working there because I used to own my own development agency here in Portland, Until Studio, and then for a while I was actually also an instructor at Code Fellows. Tech Academy is better. Anyway, but enough about that. It's mostly just want to share with you that technology is my passion. I really love it. I didn't start out as a software developer. That's why I asked if you all had friends, because I didn't have a single developer friend. I didn't have anybody. I used to be an accountant in my previous life. And my life as an accountant is best summarized like this. This was my life as an accountant. And then I coded my first HTML file, and I fell in love with web development. I still remember it was after tax season, which I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's 80 hours a week, and you're a chump if you only do 80. And one of those, like losing my mind type of things, I just stumbled upon web development. I stumbled upon Code Academy and coded my first HTML. I fell in love, and after that, it was like a little more like this. So that was back in the day. I just had a baby, so that reminds me of that. So my life now, again, it's a supply. We digital products and design development company. We help leaders craft their transformative experiences. But I'm not here so much to talk about supply. I'm actually here to kind of focus on my passion, which is technology, and kind of show you how to get started in it. Okay, so let's right out of the gate, right? What's it like in the tech industry? So the first thing about that is that tech industry is honestly just a big word that encompasses a lot of different fields. So let's kind of like dive deeper into that a little, right? There are multiple career paths that you can take within the tech industry. Some of those are like you can be a web developer, you can be an iOS developer, you can be a software developer, you can be a cloud engineer, UX UI, QA engineer, information architect, strategist, all that within the tech industry type of stuff. Then within that industry, you can choose who you want to work for, and there's various different places that you can go to. For example, you can work at a development agency, you can work at a creative agency, you can work for a private corporation, for a product company, healthcare, in education. So what's it like a day in the life of a developer? Well, before it was a little more like this when I was an accountant, right? As a developer, it's a little more like this. That's just to speak to the nature of accounting. So this brings us to what is the tech culture like in a development? What are you expecting? I can only speak off of experience, so what I've been a part of, and I've been a part of development agencies. Development agencies usually work like there's a bunch of developers, and the one that I was in, you probably know about it, was Metal Toad 6 years ago. And that there was like 50 developers, and we would have companies from all over the place wanting to work with us, and we would be assigned into groups of 4 or 5, and then together they would give us the project. Sometimes that project was to fix the front end or to update the front end or create websites for them. Sometimes the project was to integrate something completely outside of their products into something that was in that they were offering already. Sometimes it was completely from scratch. You just start everything up again. So that is a very different experience than you would at perhaps a product company, when there's the one thing that needs to get done, and within that one product, there's a bunch of different people working towards the same goal. So speaking for the development agency culture, it was a little more like this. It's kind of like people standing around near a food table, talking, taking a break from coding, walked a little further in, people are coding, and I took this picture, nobody knew that I took it, they're all into like their computers. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes they're late nights because you really want to get it done, or you have a deadline, or there was a bug, or something happened, and you're just there. Sometimes you just stay late night because you enjoy the people that you're with, and you just kind of want to hang out. It's a little bit more like that, They offer you ping pong, beer, friends. Nobody wants to understand you, really. Like, hey man, have you heard about Vim? Oh, I heard of it. Like, I try to do that with my wife. She doesn't grasp it. So that's a little bit more of like how my experience has been inside like the development agency stuff. Outside of this, and we can talk more about it, I was expecting maybe at the end. Depending on the project, you will, it's run differently, but usually it'll be some form of agile methodology. So you can expect getting there in the morning. Let's say that the sprint started on Monday, so you have the stand-up meeting where you say what you're going to work on, and stuff. You outline all those in the sprint planning, which is just basically you go through all the stories. I don't know if you've gone through that already, or if I'm speaking something that you haven't been exposed to yet. Does anybody know what a sprint planning meeting is? Yeah. Everybody knows what agile in some formats, stories. And okay, cool. So for those who don't, just in case somebody didn't raise their hands, the way they build software is you break out all the components into like these stories, and then there's a backlog grooming where usually all the developers get together and they size or estimate all those stories. That happens backlog grooming, usually if you're on point. Then you go into sprint planning and you decide, hey, we're going to do this amount of stories based on our velocity. So you hash all that out in sprint planning. Hey, last sprint we did 60. We should shoot for 60 this sprint. And then you figure out what those 60 points are, you put them in your sprint, and that's it. Then, depending on the project, sometimes you go like, hey, I want piece 15, or hey, let's not assign it to anybody, just grab it from the table. It's all depending on the project and who you work with. And then that's it, day in, day out. You go in, you know your stories, you're working on your things, you go home, couldn't figure it out today, you go back, you do that for 2 weeks. In the 2 weeks, you usually have a deliverable, which means like the features that you were working on for the 2 weeks are completed, and you shoot it up to production or staging or development, depending on the project. That is outside of the playing, outside of what you're actually doing in front of the computer. That's the ultimate goal, really. And then I would say that that's the overarching arc. And most people tend to either have shorter sprints, like 1 week sprints, 2 week sprints, 3 week sprints, but overall it's about the same flavor, same process. So to dive back into more images of like how it's like then there's like your tech setup that looks nothing like this. It's more like this, right? And the reason there's Post-its, I know how Post-its works, by the way. I just left for the bathroom and my friends were kind enough to let me do all this for me. They're great people. So that's just to kind of like speak to what you think it might be to what it really is, you know, just in front of your computer and you code, you work. So let's dive deeper into like what is a web developer. I give you a list of all the different ones, but I want to speak specifically to the web developer one, right? So, because that's the one that I feel like I have the most experience on, so I can only speak from there. So, web developer, right? It's just one of type of programmers, but they focus specifically on the web. So, and it breaks it down into like there's basically two areas of knowledge, domains. So the front end and the back end. Usually, some people say like, "Hey, I'm a front end developer." Some people say like, "No, I strictly am back end developer. I don't want to touch CSS." Some people go like, "I got it. I'm both. I can do both. Full stack." When I first started, I had high aspirations of being a full stack developer. Then I got really good on the front end. And guess what? All the tickets they would send my way were the front end. And it was great because then I honed that in, you know? And then when you get really good at something, you're like, I'm so good. You build all this confidence. And then you go like, okay, well now I want to do that back-end stuff. And you go in there and it's like you're just starting all over again. Oh, how do you do this? I wonder. I help them code reviews. They're kind to me. And usually they are, because developers, one of the beautiful things is they really do want to share what they know. And like, they really want to tell you like, this is why you do it this way. And I'm not saying that they're not people that are going to make it hard, but for the most part, most of my colleagues have been like, yeah, man, this is it. This is what it's cool. This is what it's all about. So this is a web developer, so let's go and break it down a little bit. The front-end technologies, which I asked you all, and this is kind of where you're all working towards, is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I would say these are the foundation languages. I also think that it's best when starting out to focus on these. And the reason for that is because of the quick feedback that you get. You code, you refresh the browser, you see the changes. So it's easier to make those mental models in the beginning when you're learning about programming paradigms to see a quick feedback loop of what's happening, as opposed to starting, and I'm not trying to discourage anybody, if you want to start in the back end, go for it. But as opposed to starting where you send a command, you're like, did it work? And you're like, you try another, like, I find it's easier to understand concepts of like looping and arrays and data structures, and you're able to like see what those actually mean quickly on the front end. That's just my 2 cents. So again, the beautiful part is to start with these again for the feedback loop. And outside of your resources here in Tech Academy, there are also supplemental resources if you really want to dive deeper into it. The ones that I went through, and I just scoured through them when I was first starting out, were the tree houses, the code schools, and the code academies. This might date me because I don't know if these people are still around, but I remember just doing all the code academies in addition to all the other stuff that I was doing, because it helped me with the actual syntax. So that's just me. But outside of these supplemental resources, I would say that the thing that helped me the most was one person. It was like having a mentor, having somebody that I could talk to, having somebody that understood that I might have difficulties, having somebody that I knew that I could ask questions to, that they would either tell me, like, hey man, this is how it goes, or point me in the right direction, or tell me like, no, you're way off, and it saves me just kind of hours of me hitting my head against the table because I couldn't understand something. So I would say that one of the things that I would encourage you the most, and that I would say that would have the most significant impact on your learning, it would be finding a mentor. Finding somebody that you can count on to answer your questions. It's a little bit of me and my mentor. Surprisingly accurate. But let's go back. It's distracting. It's so funny. But let's go talk a little bit more about programmer or developer in general, and why I think it's one of the best careers. Like I said, I was an accountant, so I was familiar with having technical knowledge, but it wasn't really until I became a developer that I understood that it's a skill-based career. You either know how to do it or you don't. And that, for me, was one of the things that I appreciated the most out of this career. I don't have to fake knowing something. And in fact, that was one of the things that my mentor first taught me. It's like, rule number 1, if you don't know it, say I don't know. Because having that one thing is what makes a good partner, a good colleague. Like, hey man, I'm trying to do this thing. I don't know how to do that actually. Is that like this? Is more helpful than, oh, that's easy. Yeah, I know that. That's easy. And then, okay, well, help me. I've never done it before. when you're in the trenches, kind of with your colleagues, that you're solving problems. So you want to know that you can count on that person person has solved it before, and that they'll guide you in the right direction. If not knowing is not a hindrance. You just go and learn it. Much like you did all the other stuff that got you to that point. Just learn it. So if you leave with anything today, it's just knowing that if you don't know something, just say you don't know. There's no shame in not knowing, because not everybody knows everything. You know? Also, the space is so broad that you have the ability to be very good at these things and be free to not know these things. I can only encourage you to just be honest about that, and also like find what of the whole gamut of things is that the ones that appeal to you the most. But given that it's a skill-based career, the beauty is the portfolio, because this will showcase what it is that you do know. This is how you drive the conversation forward in your interviews about these are the things that I'm really into, and look. Also, you don't have to say to the point of not lying about what you do know. In your resume, you can be confident in putting all the things that you do know, because you're going to showcase them in your portfolio. And just so you know, the way that I got my first job is I would look at the job that I wanted to work in. I would look at the qualifications that they had, and then I matched my portfolio to the things that they were looking for. Luckily, I was looking for front-end work, and at the time, it was Compass, like Bootstrap, like CSS, but using Compass, like the Judy Ramp, the Ruby Gem. So I remember coding a landing page all in Bootstrap, because I wanted to show that I knew responsive design. And it was a simple landing page, but I wanted to show that I knew Bootstrap. I wanted to show that I knew how to use Compass. I wanted to show that I could, because those were the things that they were looking for. So now that I'm diving into portfolio, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like I said, it helps in driving the conversation forward if you get called for an interview, and sets you apart from your skill sets, because they're looking whether you know how to do the job or not. You know? And so when I interview people, I remember before I would ask them, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? Hey, what's the difference in JavaScript between call and apply? Go. Like these little nuances to see if I can get them. But that quickly faded away, because whenever I would ask that question, it would be unfair to the person receiving it, because they're just not into what I was into. So now I mostly ask, like, what are you into? Like, what's the thing that you like? And then if they share something that I share, we geek out about it together. Hey man, do you like Vim? Yeah. Guess who's your new best friend? But if not, what are you into? Maybe they'll tell me like, oh dude, I'm actually really, really into blockchain. And I could be like, oh, that's really dope. I coded one. I don't see a practical application, but maybe you can show me how we can do this. And then they tell me, and wow, now I'm in love with blockchain. This is great. So that same level of enthusiasm is what you'll be able to show and display in your interview with your portfolio. Lastly, in the portfolio, just because this is an advice that my mentor gave me, is have something technical, have something visual, have something code related, and have something flashy. So my visual one was the landing page that I told you about. It was just using Bootstrap, because I wanted to show that I knew responsive. Then the technical, I coded this 2 quizzes. One, it was a simple hot and cold app, and depending whether you were hot or cold, it would change the color of the screen. Best thing I ever, I thought I discovered the world when I did that. And then the second technical one was I coded a Myers-Briggs app. Like, you would answer some questions, and then it would tell you like, oh, you're an ENTJ, you're an ENTP. And just so you know, it was procedural JavaScript. It was like answered. There was no code reusability. There was no factory. There was no like function reuse. It was if the user clicks on this, give him that. And like, but I remember I spent so many hours doing that, and to this day I show it off. Nobody sees the code. But to this day I show it off like, oh, you want to know your Myers-Briggs? Take this little quiz off, and I just love it. Anyway, I learned so much from them, but I'm just saying like those were the projects that I would use to like show like, hey man, this is what I'm into. I like Myers-Briggs, I like JavaScript, let's put it together. And then lastly, the flashy one, and it's just so that they remember you. It was an HTML5 game that resembled Mario, but it was like it was a little Martian, so I called it Martio. So, and then it was like, all it did was like, go and then you could jump, and then go back up. That's it. But it was flashy. And so when I would go to interviews, I was like, yeah, I'm working on this game, I can show you. And I would show enthusiasm. I think that kind of took me farther, like, yeah, we can teach this guy. And that feeling of I can teach this guy is important because we do it together, you know? We're all developers. We all have things that we're interested in, things that we're curious about. Hopefully the thing that I'm curious about, you're interested in, and then we can share it, mind meld together, and we can teach each other. And you're not alone, you know? We're all in this together. And I think that general idea of you're not alone is what drew me into it. Again, just to draw a little bit from my experience as an accountant, it really was kind of dog eat dog in there. I really was alone. If I had a question about like, hey, what's the amortization rate for a bond 30 years? I'd be like, you don't know the amortization bond for the 30 years? No, I don't, I'm so sorry. In this tech world, that's not really the case, right? In this tech world, there's like this whole website, Stack Overflow, and it's just like, hey man, what do you want to know? There's probably 1,000 people that have had the same question, right? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Stack Overflow, but if you are, I would assume you are, because that's what I use most of the time. There's this nice little XKCD cartoon of this one guy that asks a question and he looks for it in Stack Overflow, and this one guy asked the same question, but then nobody replied to him, and he was like, what is the answer? And it was like posted in 2001. He's like, what is the answer, man? He never went back to answer it back. I think that's hilarious. That happens to me all the time. But anyway, my point is that we're together in this, and also that, you know, it's open source. So there are people out there on an incredibly large scale that want you to succeed, that want you to do better, that want you to know the answer, and want you to come back and help somebody else succeed. And one of the ways that I see that ability of teaching others and just like wanting them to succeed is, you can imagine like a set of stairs, right? You don't have to be to the furthest stair to help the one that's before you, you know? So like if you're in the third one, you help the people in the second get up. Come here, you know as much as I do. Hopefully somebody reaches out a hand and then we get up there together. You know, but that's the general metaphor. Like, you don't need to know everything, but what you do know, if you use that to help others, then you know you make each other stronger, and then you keep going and learning more and learning more. And also the beauty of this is that honestly, you never stop learning. And that might sound like oh, when am I going to be done? But honestly, it only feels that way now because you're starting. Once you do know that, you're going to be like, what else can I do? What else can I know? What are better ways of doing the same thing that I did? Oh yeah, that is better. Now let me go learn that. And then you learn that. Oh yeah, that is better. So, and I've said a lot of things, so don't let any of the big stuff like throw you off. So I'm talking a lot about it. It could seem like a lot, but you can do it. I did it. And so before I move on, I just kind of want to address some of the things that usually come out of these conversations, these talks, some fears. So one of the fears that I get is, am I too late to start on web development? Did I start too late? And the answer is no, not at all. Like, technology is always changing, it's always new. Like when I first started, the hot stuff was Angular, AngularJS. People couldn't get enough, right? 2 years later, boom, React. React is the thing. Was I too late? No, because I got React immediately at the same time as everybody else. So we were all learning it together. So React right now is holding strong, but maybe there'll be something else that comes over and it'll take it over, right? And then by that time, you'll pick it up at the same time and you just roll with it, and then you're the expert of that new stuff that comes up. You're never too late. So that's one. And again, like it says there, like we're constantly learning. So that's just constant process. Another one is, am I crazy for doing it? Crazy for starting new web development? Yes, you are, absolutely. And that's why we need you. We need problem solvers. We need people who are like, oh, I'm crazy for doing this. Yes, we're a good company. That we, like I wrote there, we really do need like bold people that are curious and care about the work. And with technology, we really do improve the lives of those around us. And one of the things that I like the best is that it gives you the ability to honestly leverage the internet, which will grant you the access to have a big impact on a very large scale. So like you can come up with an app that helps a bunch of different people. You know, it's actually not as crazy as you think. It's actually very doable. And then another one is, can I do this? And I said, yeah, you can, definitely. And we're all doing it together. And join us, we have donuts. That has changed every talk. Sometimes we have beer, sometimes we have donuts, sometimes we have cookies. The point is that we have stuff and you can join us. And I would be excited to. So I don't know, I was, like I said earlier, I was an instructor. So I remember taking somebody who had never opened the laptop to like running Git commands on the terminal. And I remember by the end, she was like, oh, yeah, don't worry. Oh, I messed it up. Git check out Git check. And I was like, oh, you just got that laptop like a month ago. Yeah, I got it. I love that. I love seeing that. That's the same feeling I get when I learn something. Look at me. I'm doing it. Never thought I could. And then another one, lastly, I would say, is how long it will take you. I think that's usually like, oh, I don't know. So I wrote, it'll take you about a year to be a rookie, about a year of just doing it to be like, okay, I kind of know the lay of the land. I can do some stuff, but I can only speak again to me. It took me 4 months just to learn the basics, and another 4 months on top of that, building my portfolio, just iterating over it. I did have a full-time job, so it was at night, so it took me about 4 months to do my landing page with Bootstrap and my columns, just dealing with CSS in general, which now I can just do it with my eyes closed, but back then I was like, oh, I don't know how to do it. And I would say like I did that with the help of my mentor, and I had a lot of drive. I was very excited to do it. I was very excited to learn it, and I had help from my mentor. So him and I would meet up once a week, and I would just ask him all my questions, write them all down. What is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? Why doesn't this work? Why doesn't it? And then he would just be like, messing up here. This is pretty cool. Oh, you're into animations, and like kept me engaged. Another thing that he would do is he introduced me to Project Euler, which are these like crazy algorithm projects. You probably heard of the first one. It's like, I think it's like more than 40 problems and just algorithms. And you try to solve them. You probably heard of one, which the first one is kind of like loop from 1 to 100. And if it's divisible by 5 and 3, print fist buzz. Divisible by 3, print buzz. 5, fist. Anyway, that. I remember when he told me that, I was like, I think I can do that. Coding, and then my other accounting friends would talk to me like, hey, anything anyway about the amortization. I'm like, yeah, dude, come on, I'm on the fiscal thing right now. Like, don't bother me with this. And I was incredibly engaged. It just kept me like intellectually stimulated enough that I truly enjoyed it. And then usually I put that one in there because my then girlfriend was in there, and that's just my wife. So I'm just gonna move on past this. I wanted to know, like, where do we go from here? And I'd say just, you guys are already doing it, so keep going, keep trying it out. At times it can be difficult. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years, and there are times when I'm like, ugh, like good enough. It happens all the time. Know that everybody feels that way. We all feel that way at different times. And that it's okay, and just keep going, just keep learning. Like, I can only imagine, because I have 7 years. Whenever I feel that way, I could be like, no, but I did that thing, so I'm good. I can only imagine what I must feel in the beginning, or like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Every day. So just keep going. You're doing great. And honestly, that's as much as I can give you right now. So thank you.
Any questions?
And I'm curious on answering questions. Yeah.
How many hours do you spend, like, average day?
Okay, so right now, I'm putting in the work because I just had a baby, so I'm literally like doing like this, put in that, and then I code. So I want to say I go to work at 8, I get out of work at 5. I'm working on my own side project. So then I feed the baby, and I put about 4 hours on top of that. And I go to bed, and I wake up, and I do it all over again. I would say anywhere between 10 hours, depending on the day. But I'm very much peaks and valleys kind of guy. So I can do like 10 hours easy, and then go down and do like 4. I feel honestly very sad. And then I do another 10, and then go down and I do 3.
So when I'm on like Quora.com,
Yeah.
like a lot of people are like, oh, I only spend like 2 hours a day coding at my job. Like most of the day is going through tickets and emails and stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. So I can tell you that I definitely spend more than 2 hours a day. I have this thing with my wife that if I'm coding, I'm like, what am I doing? Because I enjoy it. To speak to those people, sometimes when you're in a job and you're doing the thing you love, but maybe the people around you don't love it as much as you do, and maybe you're surrounded by a lot of non-coders like project managers and stakeholders and the client and designer. They're all wonderful people. I'm not saying anything. They're wonderful people, but they're trying to solve problems about, hey, we want the button to be red and in the corner, and then, oh, let me bring in the developer and, hey, can we get the color red in the corner? Yes, you can. Can I go back to coding? And then, yeah, go back. And then you sit down and you want to get into the flow. By the way, that's why I code a lot, because I'm in flow. Like time just whizzes by. I really don't know what's happening. Just listening to my music. But I'm sure that those people are dealing with that environment where there's people like pulling them in from every side, and like, hey, let's ask him, and like, let's take him out of flow, and like all that stuff.
So that could just be the nature of the company.
Of that company, exactly. In terms of, I want to be very specific. In terms of the coding, I code most of the day, and sometimes I dislike meetings. So I like knowing that Mondays is my sprint planning, and I also tend to be a very structured person. So I'm like, no, sprint planning. We decide these things in sprint planning. Doesn't mean that even though I'm like structured, I can't be flexible and like, oh, whatever, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday, you want to do it today, obviously. But I'm saying, like, depending on the maturity of the company, they will know how to do Agile, and they will know the importance of having blocks of time available for the developers to develop. They will either have that maturity or they're learning them. And I don't know who answered the question on Cora, but I'm going to just speculate and say that maybe they're not in that mature environment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Where do you meet mentors?
What do you mean mentors? So I was fortunate enough that I was in like a dev boot camp, and I met him there. But I would also say that meetups are a great place to meet people, just because, by the very nature of meetups, you both are interested in the same thing. And So if you're really into, I don't know, Python, C Sharp, you can go to a C Sharp meetup, or .NET meetup, and then talk to them. And then you'll find somebody that's really eager to share all the cool stuff they're doing in C Sharp, and then maybe you can ask them. And then maybe you can ask them to, hey man, I was trying that, and I find that I can't do this one thing. Can you just take a look at it and see what's, just a quick glance, code smell it for me and make sure that it's cool? They'll be like, oh yeah, this is cool, or oh, it's that thing right there, change it. And then leave it at that. You come to the next meetup, hey buddy, remember me? I've mentored people that way. I used to go to the Saturday mentorship program that Metal Toad had, and I would just be there, and I'd be like, hey, what's up? What questions do you all have? Like, anybody has anything that they're struggling with? Happy to help, because I've been doing it literally the whole week. Basically what I've been doing. What is your problem? What is your problem? I know that Metal Toad had that. I don't know if they have it still, but I'm sure other meetups will probably find people like that.
Yeah, I guess I have a question like what about maybe like finding a path for your career. You're seeing there's iOS backend security, front end web development. Like there's all these things. You kind of it sounds like you just kind of followed what interested you and what you liked, and your path that kind of happened. But what could you say about
that? Yeah, so it's really funny, right? Because it is skill based, so you need to learn these things. But I find that I learn better when I like it. So I'll give you an example of something I don't like. In fact, I'll give you an example of something I hate. Drupal. Can't stand it. Cannot fathom it. All my friends in the beginning, all Drupal developers. I couldn't do it. And I'll give you my own personal take on it. To be locked in to a monolithic structure and have to learn the ins and outs of that one thing drove me insane. So I would find the whole time I'm not learning PHP, I'm not learning Nginx, I'm not learning MySQL, I'm learning how Drupal wants it to be all these things. And that, personal take, bothered me. So very early on I was like, you know what, I don't like that. You know what I do like? I like decoupling. I like having a backend that's very decoupled, meaning that it's just the API itself that sends information to a front end somewhere. I like that because then that gives me the freedom to make the front end whatever I want. It could be a React app, it could be an Angular app, it could be Swerve, it could be plain HTML, it could be anything. And I like that freedom. I like the ability to be like, this is going to be this, and then the back end doesn't have to be PHP and Drupal. It's going to be Django, Python, talking to a Postgres database. I got to choose all those different things. I got to choose everything, and I architected it and meshed it together. So whenever I would be at work, and they would be like, hey, we have this non-Drupal work, I'd be like, please, give it to me, give it to me. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I just knew it wasn't Drupal, and I knew that that's what I was most interested in. How that developed my career then is that, which happens, technologies come, technologies go, Drupal work started fading, a little bit more, back in the junior days, a little bit more of the Angular work, and who had the most Angular JS experience? The rookie. So I was answering questions for the seniors. Yeah, I wouldn't do it that way. Actually, a service needs to be outside of the controller. Thank you. So that was how I was like, oh, I think I like this. Anyway, and that just kept going. Then Angular fell down the wayside because React kept coming in. Then I was like, oh, this is kind of similar in that they have these structures. Oh, okay. And then just kept evolving. Now where I'm at now is like, I like React. In my opinion, Redux is dead. In comes Apollo client. So Apollo, React, Apollo client, the backend Django or Flask, which is the lightweight. Python, if I had my choice, or Node and Express, if I had my choice, and then MySQL or Postgres. I actually don't really care about this database. It's all the same to me. I would use Mongoose, but it tends to be more expensive. So that's it. Mash them all together.
What you're talking about with your workflow where you have like peaks and valleys,
Yeah.
like, is it kind of weird to like be at work and like have a day where you're having like writer's block or whatever, and where you used to be an accountant, where probably your boss and your accountant probably always expected you to be doing something of a productive nature,
Yeah.
and now you're in an environment where it's like you might just like you ever just like look at your computer and just
Yeah, I have a Rubik's Cube. I probably can show you, and I just like do it, break it, and do it again whenever I'm thinking of a problem. But usually, to speak to the writer's block, let's say we have a story, and we are in sprint planning, and we have a story, and we're a group of devs, and nobody knows how to solve it, right? We would give it a point system. We would say that's a 13, because I don't know if you know the Fibonacci sequence. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. It kind of ends at 21. So the way that I don't know if I'm speaking. If you don't know about this, let me just explain it briefly. 1 is pretty easy. 2 is 1 is like changing a hello world to hello everybody. 2 is a little bit more complicated than that. You have to go into the database and change it from hello world to hello everybody. That's a little, it's a one step further. 3 is like, okay, I'm working on this the whole day. 5 is, okay, this is what I'm gonna do for the next 2 or 3 days. And 8 is, clear my calendar, this is what I'm doing for this sprint. 13 is, I don't know how to even approach this. 21 is, I don't even know what you're asking. Okay? So if you have a 21, they wouldn't give you that story point because we have to define it better. The same logic applies to the 13, which is the like, oh, I have writer's block kind of mentality. It's not well defined because that 13 should be broken down to the specific 1s and 2s that need to happen. So what will happen is you will be mostly doing 1s and 2s and 3s. Things that you know how to do, you understand at least what needs to be done, and you don't have writer's block around that because it's very well defined. Now, I had that same question when I started, and I'll tell you what a more experienced developer is like. You only think you have writer's block right now, but there's gonna come a point where that's just gonna flow. Like you're not even thinking about it. You're thinking you have that because you're probably not as comfortable yet, and you will get there. I'll tell you what I thought in the moment when he told me that. I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I think I'm always gonna have it. Looking back now, I get what he's saying. Like, I don't know that I've been presented with a thing that I don't know. It's mostly that I think I know, and I write it all down, and then I'm wrong. But I still have like it's this direction. I hope that answers your question.
yeah, so like a lot of the time a lot of the time you spent planning when you're like breaking down exactly the direction and the scope of your work.
Yes. Like let me see if I can explain. Like, you need to log in to the app, right? That can be broken down into you need to create the input form. You need to create the function that calls the authorization. You need to create the button that the user will click after they enter the form. See, like, it's broken down. Oh, I just need to focus on creating the input form. That's a small problem that you can code. And then you do that for a whole week. And by the end, you have the input form, you have the button, you have the mechanism that gathers the data. You know that there's a function somewhere, but you don't know who it's going to call. So it's a big thing, authenticate, broken down into small little pieces, and then you just tackle them one at a time. And by the time you get to the thing that you don't know how to do, you either talk to other people, hey man, I'm trying to authenticate. I got the data, I got the button, where do I send it? It's an easier conversation to have with your peers as to how to solve it. And somebody will tell you like, oh, I did that before, dude, just use this. And then they'll show you. And then after that, you're like, oh, you know what I can do? I can authenticate people. Toolbox, next problem. So I guess I'm trying to reassure you that will not happen as much as you expect it. You will know. you don't, you can ask questions and everybody will be there to like, hey man, this is it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just have one more question
Don't be,
about like
please.
workflow and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
So is it like less about like putting in 40 hours a week and more about like, oh, we have to get around this much, that like
Yeah.
in the sprint planning session, like we have to reach our milestones from the sprint.
Yeah, that's a good. So yes, it's not so much about the hours put; it's about solving the problems. So sometimes you get really good and efficient about solving the problems, even though your sprint is 2 weeks. You finish it in a week. Or you finish it in a week and a half. And then the other 2 days, skipping around the office,
Really?
challenging people to play foosball, like playing ping pong. Some sprints are really difficult, and your other friends are playing ping pong and doing. You're like, how do I solve this? But I don't want to make it seem like how do I solve this? It's like not intellectually stimulating, or that you're like suffering in any way. Like you're like coding. You're like yeah, this is how you do it. Oh, it didn't work. You have your time to play and stuff. Like you're doing this thing now. You're really into this. So to answer your question more directly, it's not about the 40 hours. It's about solving the problems. Sometimes you solve them quick. Sometimes it takes you a little longer. But it's just about that.
But if you solved a problem earlier, would you like do another sprint planning and try and do more, or would you just be like, no, I'm just gonna play ping pong this week?
Yeah, well, you're asking the right developer because I have like 1,000 opinions about that. I don't like stretch goals. I think stretch goals are not good. Why? Because let's say that we have the goal of doing 40. In comes the PM and says, well, the stretch goal is to do 50, okay? Let's say we do the 40. We should be high-fiving everybody. Hey, man, we hit our goal, 40. We're killing it. But you know what? It won't happen because we didn't hit the stretch goal. So even though we actually succeeded, we're going to be like, oh, man, we didn't hit the 50. Like, we're not as good. That's this opinionated developer point of view on it because I've seen it in teams that I've been in. No, man, we hit the 40. It's not because we're making up the name. It's because we know our velocity. Our velocity is how many we are able to do in 2 weeks. And last week we did 35. The week before that we did 38. This week we did 40. Sure, we didn't hit the 50, but look at our trajectory. We're getting better. We're improving. This is good news. Next time, let's do 45. Let's see if we hit it. So anyway, that's just my opinion. Just give you all that for no reason.
So it is important to like play ping pong and like have some like celebration time.
100% because you're solving problems, and you tend to solve problems when you're in a better, happy mood. Like if you're just feeling good, you tend to be a little more calm when you approach a problem. If you're stressed out and like stuff, and you're gonna hit the problem, you're gonna approach the problem. You're like already in a negative state, you're not gonna be able to think clearly. You have one?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what were your first 3 tech jobs, and how did you transition from like accounting into sequentially through those first 3?
Yeah. So accountant. Not like it. My dad was a CPA. That's why I chose to be an accountant. So then after that, I did my portfolio and everything, and then I got a job as a front-end developer for a wine company. And I was mostly doing like crafting the wine images that you see, like cropping them and putting them together and then putting that in HTML tags. That was most of my work. And then the developer there, and it was paying phenomenal, okay? But it was just cropping images. Like that's not something that I wanted to do. And the developer there, she was really into Cold Fusion. Have you heard about Cold Fusion? I hadn't either. I don't know what that is. It was a technology of an old technology, and then when I would research Cold Fusion, because I was like, oh my god, I want to learn this, it would show the Stack Overflow trend of like nobody's learning this, dude. And I was like, oh no. And so I immediately started looking for another job because if I put my time in there, it wasn't really gonna do for anything. And then that's when my mentor was like, hey man, I'm actually working at this metal toad place. I think you'd be good for it. Give me your portfolio and I'll shoot it over. And I was like, that would be amazing. And then he quit. What? And so, but he actually gave me a portfolio, and then they just happened to call me. I was living in LA at the time, and they did a little video messaging thing, and I remember being all excited, and it was for a junior position. The other one was for an actual developer position. But this was for a junior position, which I was happy to have, because I felt like it would have more mentoring, and I was really interested in learning. I knew that I didn't know enough, but I just wanted to be surrounded by developers. I just wanted to have developer friends. I wanted to talk code. That's all I really wanted. I only had this one guy that I would face chat with him once a week. I just wanted to be like engulfed in. So I had the interview, and to my belief, I did horrible. I was cracking jokes. I was like, nobody laughed in the interview. It was 4 faces, nothing, not a single crack. I was like, oh no. And then we hung up, and I was like, I blew it. The next day, hey Cesar, would you like to have a job? And I was like elated. So the next week I moved up here to Portland, and I started working there. I worked there as a junior. I went through a whole year of being a junior, doing the thing where I'm like, no Drupal projects, come like give them to me. I did that for a year, and then they graduated me into a proper developer there. And by then, honestly, it's more of a courtesy thing. I feel like a developer in the sense like, what do you need? I can do that. I can't do that, but I know I can do that. So I was feeling like more confident. I did that then for 2 more years, and after those 2 years, I was in various projects. And kind of to touch on what you were saying, every time I was in a group, it was 4 of us, we succeeded. Like, we were very, like, let's do sprint planning, let's do the stories, let's do everything, let's set it up. Boom, like 2 weeks, boom, deliverable. 2 weeks, boom, deliverable. We're very keen, like we were like a well-oiled machine. So after that, we were like kind of cocky, and we were like, well, what do we need this company for? You know, if we find our own clients, seems like we have all we need here, boys. And so 4 of us branched out into our own company, and we landed this big contract doing the same thing. And then we just treating a little company like it's just us. Let's do this. And we did that for 2 years. And then after that, the people that I was with, they really liked the lifestyle. They really liked that it's my company, show up whenever I want, I don't have bosses, I don't have anything. I was more like, let's grow this. We can be better. And we have different views around that. They like the lifestyle. I respect that. I said, I'm gonna go find another company. And so I sold my shares, did a deal, and I joined another company that was working with bigger clients, doing bigger projects. This is kind of what's more I like to do. And so that's mostly like my career. Thank you so much.
Cool. Any other questions?
So I know that technology is always changing, and so we're always having to learn. Do you do a lot of learning during work, or is that kind of more where you in your side projects? Or how do you
Yeah. Look, I am. I'll show you. I'm not trying to lie to you. Look, right now I'm taking a course on Udemy for Docker integration with Node. Why? Because I love it. I love Docker, and I want to know what the best practices are for integrating Docker, and specifically in a Node environment, because I'm about to start charging credit cards. I want to make sure that it's really safe and that I'm not missing anything. And my point is that I'm interested in that because I have a project and I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So I'm just learning about it. And luckily, this is not. This project is a little looser than the sprint planning one, because if it were more strict, I would just delegate this task to somebody else that has done it before, and I would like review their code and see how they're doing it and learn that way. And then at night, I would like just because I find this interesting, honestly, so I would just learn it. Oh, I see what you're doing, and I would just talk to them during lunch. Like, hey, I saw that you put it in here. You know, I hear that it's better if you put it in there. And then, oh yeah, thanks.
So it's kind of both at work and at home. It's kind of a big response.
Yes. for example, Elasticsearch, which is a searching database, I learned it while at work. Never touched it before, read the documentation, and implemented it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Really good information, guys, and I want to thank Cesar for coming out today. There is pizza back there if anybody wants pizza, and yeah, great job. That was pretty inspirational.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. Whatever way I can help, please.
Cool. Are you on like LinkedIn and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Here.
Thanks.
Yeah, don't worry, man. Honestly, feel free. I do this all the time.
Sure.